Hello, hello, hello. You are with me, your host of Soul Talk, Rabbi Zevi Weinberg, and I am so excited to be interviewing Dr. Taber. We had him on the show one or two times before. He is a smashing hit, and I don't have to introduce myself that much. Those of you that are with me know me. I have a website, KabbalahWisdom.org. I've written about 20 books. And without further ado, Dr. Taber, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit. I mean, why should anyone even trust you?
Good point. I'm highly untrustworthy, I guess. I'm Charles David Tauber. I'm a physician. I come from a migrant family in New York. I did my medical studies in Groningen in the Netherlands. I finished my medical degree in 1988. Since then, I've been working with migrants and refugees and war victims with on their medical issues and primarily on their psychological issues. Since 1995, I've been the head of a small Dutch registered organization called the Coalition for Work with Psychotrauma and Peace. Although our Dutch office is indeed in the Netherlands, we're working out of a place called Vukovar in the eastern part of Croatia. We train people to be what we call barefoot therapists, that is, to take their psychological states into their own hands and assist one another. And for that, we use a Rogerian method, that is Carl Rogers. We do most of our training online so that if anybody's interested, they can have a look on www.cwwpp.org.
So let me ask you this. By the way, if you can look at the camera, then the other people are going to see you looking at them, if that's possible. I don't know the position of your camera, but
yeah, it's a little more difficult.
Okay. However, but let me just, because I want to give you some credibility. How many people have you seen over your lifetime?
Ooh, I don't know. Thousands.
Thousands. Okay, that's pretty good. And would you say you learn from each person?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every group I run, I learn from every person I run.
Right. So Dr. Taub is running groups. He's training people who are running groups. And so he's very, very highly qualified. He's not only a psychologist, but he's also a medical doctor. He's spent many years, and really he's doing this for free. It's a nonprofit organization. So there's a little bit of credibility. And the reason I wanted to interview you, we are Yidden. Thank you. We're coming up to Pesach. And Pesach, a lot of people don't, in fact, the Dalai Lama sent people to try to figure out, how did the Jews survive? I think we're probably the only nation that was dispersed throughout the entire world in the most harshest of conditions. And yet everywhere, whether it was the Jews from Yemen, whether it was the Jews from Iraq, whether it was the Jews from Iran, till this very day, whether it is the Jews, I don't know, we come from Europe, but obviously before that, we basically came from Iraq or Israel. For thousands of years, you have many communities, and yet they all were able to withstand, often, like the Rebbe says, a very sad thing, which a lot of people don't realize. He says the Holocaust, what was the tragedy of the Holocaust? 1 out of 3 Jews were murdered. He said many times in our history that happened. Now, we look at ancient civilizations, many times a great empire came, they wiped out the other empire, and none of them came back, none of them. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the only country in the history of humanity that resuscitated itself, the same language, the same religion, the same land, the same people. It never happened. So there's something amazing built in to the Jewish people. Now, on one hand, there's no question there's a divine hand, but right now I want to focus on something psychological. Because, the idea of being imprisoned, of being in Egypt, as you know, we discussed this the other day, basically there are two primary emotions according to Rabbi Shneur Zalman Ladi. There is fear and there is love. And they're like fire and water. If you have water and fire, love is this expansive thing. It's got these emotions. What does water do? Or think about Frozen. It contracts you. It stops you. So if we're feeling fear, I just walked right outside. I had to see someone. I was just so sick of this whole Corona thing and the mask. Obviously, you have to take precautions, but I'm just sick of it. So I wanted to get rid of that fear. Okay, I'll do what I have to do. I don't want to do it with any fear. I want to do it with tremendous amounts of joy. And that's the whole idea of Pesach, which is that even if you're in a certain situation, you were speaking to me before, a person could be in prison and they could be free, and they could be out of prison and they could be trapped. So that's my question to you. Psychologically speaking, as we take the message of the Jewish people, which somehow managed, right after just the Holocaust, my own grandfather lost his entire family. This talking hundreds of people. There are only 3 people that remain. Yet he came out, and if I can say, not only was he a great rabbi, he was a multimillionaire, and he established a whole family. And many Jews, we established a country. It's the 8th most powerful country in the world. There are countries that are around for thousands of years. This is the 8th most powerful. And it looks like it's going to be the most powerful. The technology and the systems are amazing. So the question is, I think everybody, by the way, everybody's looking to learn from the Jews. They want to know, okay, guys, you have something in you. So psychologically, what can we learn about making ourselves resilient that, okay, life will not always, I remember I saw this great thing from the Maharal of Prague. Everybody has a question spiritually, how do you deal with bad things? So it was an amazing answer. He said, bad things happen. So sometimes to be able to deal with it and not to get psychologically, sometimes the way I see it, the immigrants to our country, like you have a lot of Mexicans, these are really resilient people. They don't complain, they get a job and they're happy. And yet sometimes I think we that are brought up in the lap of luxury in the West, we don't have the psychological ability to deal with things that the world wishes was their problems. So, but it's a reality. Everybody's psychological state is their own reality. So my question to you is, what is the message of the Jewish people? How exactly are we resilient? Also, we've discussed there's an issue of suicide, which is hopelessness and helplessness. What can we do to make ourselves, particularly in this time, strong and vibrant and have energy and positivity to have a meaningful, happy life?
Wow, what a question.
That's it. Not a big deal.
Not a big deal, no. I think the first thing is belief. I think the first thing is belief and trust in Hashem.
In God. Hashem is God in the Jewish language, yeah.
Right. And I think that is the key to everything. To have, how shall I say this? To be sure that our faith is there and that we are following what he wants us to do. And to be being very sure of that. And to keep looking in those directions. And when it changes, it changes. But following him always. We can go into some techniques. Viktor Frankl, who also was in a concentration camp, a great psychiatrist, talked about what is called logotherapy, and that is the therapy of having a sense in life. So in other words, developing the idea, he put it into 3 parts. He put it into a job. So what is my job? What is my hobby? What is my vocation? Developing that if you don't have it immediately. Having another sense of having relationships. Where are my relationships? How are my intimate relationships? How do I relate to other people in the world? And the third thing that Frankl talked about was the sense of a higher being, in other words, of Hashem. So those three elements. And then there is this whole business of existential psychology. In other words, of dealing with precisely those things that we're talking about death, trying to find a sense in life, trying to find not meaninglessness, but meaningfulness. All of those things, those are very, very important. The other very important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is getting your feelings out, not holding things in. For example, I use a journal, I write, and that helps me because it gets my feelings out. It allows me to, how shall I say it, analyze my feelings, analyze what's going on in my life.
Can't change what you don't know.
Exactly. And a lot of it, in many of us, is buried in the subconscious, and we repress it when we're tortured, when we are, when we have traumas. What do? We push it inside. We don't want it to come out because we don't want to experience the pain. But that's precisely the wrong strategy. Get it out. Talk to somebody. And
could I interject?
Sure.
Wouldn't you say that in a safe place? Meaning,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the corollary of that, as human beings one to another, that it's very important for us to create precisely those safe places that you're talking about, Zevin, for other people. So that if you can be a listener, if you can provide that safe place, even if it's only for an hour a week, for somebody else, then you're doing an enormous service, an absolutely enormous service. And you're creating that freedom that we talk about in Pesach, because you're giving the person the freedom to get that inner stuff out. You're giving him the inner freedom. Him or her. Very, very, very important.
Yeah, I actually just spoke with a lady, I call her, she's in a nursing home. These days it's a disaster because people are stuck. And I didn't call her for long, but she just said, thank you so much. She said, even if you remember me once a month, I appreciate it. So just I would say a practical thing, what you're saying now is that we all, Judaism says, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. Each Jew is responsible for the other Jew. Arevim also means sweet. We're sweet to one another, and also means muravim. We're connected. So we have to do exactly what you're saying. We have to call someone at least once a week. All of your friends, call them once a week. Today, for a couple of days, I've been thinking, I take an hour a day, I take a walk, and I think, okay, who would appreciate a call? And I would just do that, Who would appreciate a call? And just being there, that the person can hear somebody. First of all, the fact that somebody called them means a lot. And just listening to them. And you know what's interesting? I think women know this more innately than men. Men have the need as well, but we're not, maybe not as it says, Bina Yisera, God gave women, and we know the left brain by women is bigger than or they have more white matter. So the point is that they may know this intuitively, that you have to listen and talk, but men, we're meant to be strong, but you need at least one friend. And they need at least you to be able to just share your heart. And then it says, if you have a heavy heart, a worry, tell it to somebody else. And that way it kind of dissolves. So that's just the point that I wanted to say what you were saying. There's something practical that we should all be doing.
And I want to add something with regard to men here. Men need it just as much as women do. And men wall themselves off. Men put up walls because of these cultural barriers, because we as men are not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to have emotions. We do have emotions, and we do have big feelings, and we repress them, and we repress them very badly. And when I say badly, I mean in both senses, both very heavily, but it's also very, very bad for men. I remember a case of a former soldier. This is about 10 years ago. And his wife called me in virtual panic at one point to say, I don't know what to do with him. He's freaking out. Can you come over and talk to us? And I asked him, and he said, okay, because we had known one another in a different context. And he said to her, oh, but I had to be strong, and I thought I was standing up for us. And I thought I was standing up for you, and I didn't want to hurt you, because telling you what I went through. And she said to him, look, I'd rather have you talk to me than freak out, than get angry and do this. And the kids were there at the same time. This was kind of a family meeting. And they said, we hate it when daddy is so violent, and we hate it when daddy is so angry to us. Well, that opened things up. And from what I heard later, that really did things. So I'm saying to all the guys out there, don't be afraid to talk to people. Get it out. Open yourself. Your wives and your kids are going to appreciate it more if you do that than if you keep it inside and you explode every once in a while, and you explode. That's the point. Very, very important. And if we're talking about freedom, that kind of expression is a freedom. Otherwise, you're being in prison. Otherwise, you're being in Egypt. By getting it out, you're going to the promised land.
So in a way, if I understand what you're saying, is that basically the prison is the fear of shame. And
not only shame, guilt of not wanting to hurt somebody else. All of these cultural things that we have on top of us.
but wouldn't you say that, let's say there's people that went through the Holocaust and they never wanted to share it, and there's a certain benefit to repressing it. I think that there's pretty impressive the fact that people are able to make a life, and I think that if they had to repress some of those emotions in order to be able to kind of focus and move on. So I'm just challenging the assertion.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think from what I've seen in the psychological sphere, in the educational and academic and practical psychological world, that many of the people, if not most, who have developed this trauma stuff and this business of getting things out have been Jews.
Yeah.
And this whole business, I don't want to call it Jewish psychology, because that almost is racist in a certain way. But a lot of this stuff on how you deal with high levels of trauma, how you deal with what we call transgenerational transmission of trauma. In other words, taking, for example, a lot of Holocaust victims, unfortunately, transmit this stuff to their kids. And that's really important to deal with as well. And that's not only true of the Holocaust, that's true of every trauma. You transmit this stuff to the people around you, and the people around you, especially your kids, especially the people you're closest to, get secondarily traumatized. And by the way, this can go on for generations and generations and generations. There's a lot of Jewish work on this. There's a lot of Goyish work on this too. And all of it very good. In the States, there's a guy called Volkan, Volkan, whom I would highly recommend that people read. There's a lot of Israeli work on this stuff too. Yael Danieli, and there's an Italian woman that I cannot think of her name right now. But there's a lot of work on this stuff. And it is freedom to get it out and to free yourself of it and to find mechanisms for dealing with it. It's freedom for yourself and it's freedom for everybody around you.
You know, I was listening to a lecture. He was like a top psychologist in America, and I'm part of Chabad Care, and we try to help people. So they brought this guy to speak to us. So one of the things that he said, and I think sometimes when we visualize things, it helps, says that they did this with 9/11, and he heard this from the guy that did the study, that basically what happens in trauma is that the brain, the thinking brain in a way, is the prefrontal lobe. That's only something that a human has and an animal doesn't have. But in trauma, we have, I guess, more in the back of the brain, the amygdala. And the amygdala is like this little kind of almond-sized thing. And that really regulates the emotions. So trauma basically is a fear. It's a sense of danger. And so then when that thing gets sparked, so now it literally bypasses, it shuts the blood from going to the prefrontal lobe where you process things logically, and it goes into this emotional reaction. And people can survive in a danger mode, right? They can survive as traumatized people. Not well, and obviously it's going to take a toll, but I'm saying there is a possibility of surviving. But the thing is that if you speak about it or even write it down, like you say, like a journal, just write down what happened, then what happens is that when you write, those are words, you're forming words, then you're taking the memory. They can actually watch this on an MRI. The memory will travel from the amygdala and into your prefrontal lobe. And then your brain is going to process the memory. So it's not like, imagine you're touching something hot. You're not thinking about this thing. It's like you're panicking. But actually now, if you're stopping for a moment, you say, you know, I touched something hot. Just saying those words, the words themselves are accessing a different part of the brain. It's not a reaction. It's something like intellectual, and just having it intellectual. Well, if I touched it, then I cannot touch it. I don't have to be afraid of it anymore. And so I think that if I had to sum up, as ultimately what I want to do is give tips. I think that what you said is 5 tips. Number 1 is believe in God, which is really the most powerful thing. Because if you know that there is a creator that cares about you, that loves you, every day when you wake up, say thank you to God. Because when you have gratitude, you remind yourself that God is there for you and there are good things in your life. You should definitely pray. If you're Jewish, put on tefillin. These things that connect you to God, Torah mitzvahs, do the Torah mitzvahs. Every connection point is a point of feeling safer and more secure and better and happier. And the other thing is very, very important, super critical, especially in our time, is you got to follow God. It's not enough to believe in God. You have to have a higher purpose to your life. So I know that for myself, I do a lot of blogs. I do that as a volunteer. I spend a lot of time giving a lot of information out. Why do I do it? Really, apart from the fact that I love doing it, but it makes me feel meaningful. If I didn't do it, I would feel meaningless, and I don't like feeling meaningless. I know that you help a lot of people free of charge. Why do you do it? Probably a similar reason. It makes you feel meaningful. It's a calling, and it makes you feel meaningful. And so the point is that knowing what God is, and God is communicating with us now, often as a voice in your head. It's a sense that he's telling you what to do. He really is, because we're in the Messianic era for thousands of years. We've done Torah mitzvahs according to mysticism. We pumped godliness into the world, and God is infinite. So it's like a cloud computer. He's dealing with each of us individually. He knows you, just like Google. They know you. They know your direction, and they're trying to get you to be the best you can be. At least God is. And so just listen. And I want to give you guys a secret. The way it works, because this is my field, Jewish mysticism, is God doesn't tell you why, he tells you what. If you do the what, you'll understand the why. God is giving you a mission. A soldier is not told, oh, the reason we need to conquer this bridge and the whole story. If you want, you can ask, but really he said, just conquer the bridge. Once you conquer the bridge, you'll see that you get to the next level, the next level, the next level, and it's infinite. We're always in this beautiful mission. You know, I was discussing with you this idea of helping young people overcome suicide. And I thought to myself, I developed this idea called inherent dignity. So what gives us inherent dignity? What gives us inherent dignity, and I tried this on myself and it worked, is knowing that I have been chosen by God for a mission. And God will already put that mission in front of my face. He will direct me. All I have to do is know that I've been chosen for a mission. And then I'm proud of myself that I am a person doing good in this world. And that's all. You just have to have that idea.
Yeah, and connect yourself to that divine.
Right.
Connect yourself
Right.
to God. Yeah.
Absolutely. Connect yourself. You have a creator. And think about the Torah. The Torah is a channel. It's this channel of instruction to you. Torah actually means instruction. And just feel connected to that. And you have a mission. You've got a general. You're a soldier. The world is your battlefield, obviously, to do lots of goodness and kindness. And we're all in this together. We're all in it. And so just knowing that, huh?
We are all in it together. And it's very, very important to remember that.
Yeah, right.
That this is not something of me, this is not something of you, but it's us all together. And we forget that, and governments forget that, unfortunately.
Sure, exactly. Whenever we have an us versus them mentality, run 1,000 miles. Because This is not an us versus, this is an us world. And each one of us is a benefit to everyone else. Each one of us is gifted with unique talents that nobody else in the world has, and your calling is to discover your talent. It took me a long time to discover that I'm good at what I do, which is pushing out inspirational Jewish mysticism content. Not many people, I would say, in the way that I do it, I'm unique in the world. And I don't say that with arrogance. I say that to inspire you to go find what you're unique in the world, because every person is unique and gifted in something. You're gifted in psychology, in helping people. I'm not that gifted in that, but you are. So that's why you can do something that I can't do, and I can do something that, now it's not to say you can't do some mysticism, I can't do some psychology, but we are gifted and specialized in special areas. You want to say something?
No, I was saying just that it's exactly what you're saying. And what you're coming to is self-dignity and self-respect. And that's something that a lot of people miss. That's something a lot of people put themselves down. They feel guilty, they feel shame. And something that a psychologist, when I was in therapy long, long ago, said to me was, remember, given your own circumstances, given your background, everything, you are always doing the best that you can.
Right, powerful.
That's very powerful. And that's very, very important. And that you have self-respect and that you have self-dignity. And okay, sometimes we all make mistakes. But at that moment, we were doing the best that we could. And we can try and make up for that. And that's the difference between positive and negative guilt, by the way. Positive guilt is when I make a mistake, I learn from it. I try to repair it and I learn from it, and that's positive. Negative guilt is when I say, oh, oy vey, I've done that. And I go into myself. And I don't come out of it and nothing positive comes out of it. That's really important. That's another part of freedom.
Yeah, it's a big thing. And that's why, ironically, the Rebbe says something very profound. He says, you know, following God may be, in a way, seem harder than following society, but is actually more achievable. And following society is never achievable, because society is like a wind. It goes like this and it goes like that. And so structuring yourself in this idea that I am literally a soldier of God on a battlefield to improve the world through love and kindness. When you know that, even though it may be this infinite journey, but it's an achievable journey. And if you take this societal thing, whether it's maybe fame or money, it's not achievable, because will you really be more famous and more rich than the richest and most famous people in the world? So you'll never feel adequate. And so that's why getting into a spiritual, there's a great psychologist, Dr. Tversky, he's also a rabbi, and that's one of his things. He says, you want to be happy, be spiritual. Because if you believe you're here on a spiritual mission, then you can be happy, because you can do good things, you can feel good about it, and you can feel like you're achieving your purpose. And so, of course, it's good to have money, and it's good, money can give you charity and give you safety, but it's all within a spiritual context. Once you get out of that spiritual context, then you're walking in a kind of a quicksand, which it's never enough, you're never good enough. And of course, the world, the media doesn't have anything spiritual to offer you. So what can they offer you? Basically, sex and money. That's it. And so they offer you these kind of images, and then you think, well, if that image is real, it's not real. All the people that have it aren't happy from it.
That's
So
right.
the point is that going into freedom. I remember I heard this from a rabbi. He gave a lecture once. He says, when God took the Jews, he was making them free. In America, we make a mistake what freedom is. We think freedom is not having tyranny. Freedom is not only not having someone over you, freedom is having God over you. The only free, huh?
And the other point is, what is tyranny? There's the external tyranny and there's the internal tyranny.
True, yeah.
And if I have that internal tyranny in me, and a lot of people have that, a lot of people criticize themselves. They're standing above themselves and saying, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I'm doing that, and I'm hitting myself in the face. I'm slapping myself in the face constantly. I have to do what I can do, what I believe. That's the same thing with a job. I have to have a job which not only makes me happy, but which, it's what you were saying, that I can do well, that is something that is a part of me. The minute I separate myself from that, then I'm on a wrong path.
The Chayvas Halavavis, I really recommend everybody read it. I think it's probably the most brilliant Jewish book ever written. It's called Duties of the Heart. Rabbeinu Bechaya. It's translated by Aryeh Kaplan. So he says, God has given everybody something that they're passionate about. Like for me, if you ask me, okay, you can make money from any job in the world, what would it be? For me, it would be writing books. I enjoy that, right? I haven't made much money off it. But the point is that he says, forget about everything else, just focus on that, and God will give you your income through that. So there is an element to that. So just to conclude, I think there are 5 tips that have been mentioned. There's tip number 1, which is belief in God and belief in your purpose. Now that's very important, because you mentioned something called guilt. Rabbi Tversky said an amazing thing. His whole thing, he wrote over 80 books. He says, I only wrote 1 book. It's all about self-esteem. And he says, I used to think that guilt was from psychological factors, and then I actually came to the belief that guilt is the Yetzer Hara. There's basically what some people would call a devil, a demon, a Satan in us that is trying to make you feel guilty. When you were saying that person standing above us, and I remember going to a great rabbi once, I was speaking with him, and he was smart. I guess he read me. He says, you're not allowed to talk badly about yourself. We know there's a Jewish law. You're not allowed to talk badly about anyone. And again, we're not allowed to talk badly. You're not allowed to have nasty comments. You're just not allowed to do it. And the thing is, he says, you're not allowed to do it to yourself. And when I realized that, it was like a wake-up call. I didn't realize that I was doing it to myself. My whole life I was talking badly to myself. And how are you meant to feel happy if you're busy criticizing yourself? So, like you said, how can you tell when guilt is positive if it's moving you in a positive direction? If it's moving you in sadness, negativity, you're bad, that is actually evil. That is the evil trying to destroy you. And it's real, because people commit suicide off of this. It's very evil and it's very real.
Very much so. That's that's the worst thing. If I'm suicidal, I don't have any value in the world. I'm doing bad things to other people. I'm doing bad things to myself. That's why I'm committing suicide.
Right.
So do things, anybody who's out there, do things to get your self-image up, to improve your self-image. Talk to yourself. I know it sounds weird and I know it sounds almost crazy, but talk to yourself.
The most successful people talk to themselves, by the way.
That's right. I make the joke that you're talking to the most intelligent person possible.
I would agree.
Yeah, exactly. Look in, this will sound absolutely wild, but look in the mirror and talk to yourself for 5 minutes a day. See what it does. A lot of people have very great difficulty. I give that to clients as an exercise, but it works. It really, talk to that person you see there. That really helps. And remember also, we're all, and I know I'm throwing a lot out here. We all have different parts of our personality. And let the two parts talk, let the various parts talk to one another. Have an inner conference.
Let them fight it out.
Exactly. Not fight it out, but talk about it calmly and sensibly. So let the 12-year-old talk to the 60-year-old. Let the teacher talk to the little child. All those kinds of things. Let the father talk to the child at the beginning. All of that stuff. Yeah, it really works.
All right, so we've given people lots of tips. I have to try to summarize without getting into more stuff, but I think everything we've said is first of all, belief in God, know that you matter, know that you have a mission, do your mission. And then you said 3 things from Viktor Frankl, which is have a job or a hobby that you like, especially now where a lot of people are out of work. Find something meaningful that you do. Exactly. Second of all, relationships are super important. We are relationship beings. I wrote this today on my blog. Don't think you can be in conflict and you'll win from that. You can only be happy from love and unity and peace. It's just the way we're wired. Do whatever it takes. Say sorry. I had a conflict today. Right away. It's not easy. It hurt my ego, but I said sorry very quickly and I felt a lot better afterwards. Okay. So it's worth it. Say sorry. And like you say, have intimate relationships. Ideally get married, have a serious intimate relationship, one of respect and love. And that's a good thing. I would also, yeah.
And even if you're not married and you have a very good friend to whom you can say anything and everything.
Right. Yes. Yes. Correct.
That's very, very, very important.
Yes. Yes.
Talk to somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Open yourself up.
Yes. And you know, the Jewish sages say a very interesting thing. They say, "Aseh lecha rav," which if you want to call it, acquire for yourself a rabbi or a spiritual guide.
Yeah.
And they say, "Kinei lecha chaver," buy a friend. I think we're waiting for somebody else to be our friend. Do whatever it takes to make someone your friend. And you can do it because you can start that. Relationships are like mirrors. You start shining the light, it starts shining back. Choose anybody that you want to be intimate with, which means kind of emotionally, and say, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power that that person will be the friend that I can talk to that person anything. And if 2 people have that, they'll be 1,000 times better off psychologically.
Completely agree with that. I completely
So you got to make that effort to do that. And remember, everybody else needs it as desperately as you do. So just do it. And then the third thing you said from Viktor Frankl is having basically a higher power connection to God, which we sort of spoke about. And then the last thing, which was your thing, which is if you're traumatized, you've been through tough stuff, have a journal, write it out. We spoke about having a friend, Go to a therapist that you trust. Again, remember, it only works if you trust the therapist. You don't feel trust, get another therapist. But if you trust the therapist, then somebody that you can feel safe with, get it out, take those emotions out of you. And literally, if you just do these 5 things that we discussed, and I'm going to add one more, I think you'll be pretty good. You'll be really good. Yeah.
Getting the feelings out. I don't care how you do it. If you do it with the writing, do it with art, do it with music. However you can get those feelings out, get them out. And the connection with another person. And for those of you who can do it out there, listen to other people. Open, safe spaces for other people. This is extremely important. I cannot emphasize it enough.
Right, because you'll be saving lives. It's just that
That's
simple.
right. That's exactly what
you'll
you're
be saving
doing.
lives.
If you create those safe spaces for people, if you listen to people uncritically, very much uncritically.
Right.
There are some sessions in which I don't say 10 words in a whole hour. I just sit there and I say, yeah, yeah. And I listen and I'm watching very attentively. And that works. And I was surprised a couple of days ago. It's what you were saying a little earlier, Zevi. I thought it was a nothing call. I just spoke to somebody. And it was a 15-minute, 20-minute call, nothing. And he said to me, hey, do you know what this means to me? Just that you called me. And I've had that a couple of times where I didn't think it was anything. And he said, just the very connection is crucial.
Sure. Now, I want to conclude with something which is Jewish. I think a lot of the issues that we have, right? So trauma can be a fear issue, but it also can be an anger issue. That
Sure.
we're angry, that basically what happens is that somebody, let's say, put us down, and our ego has been a little bit crushed, and the ego doesn't like to be crushed. It doesn't mind being higher than someone, it doesn't mind being equal to someone, but it hates being lower than someone.
Right.
And so I think that part of our spiritual journey in life, and this is an amazing teaching, there's an interesting law in Judaism, which is if a brother dies and he didn't have children, his wife should marry a brother, because to create a child, to create a name for his brother. So even though it's not mainly practiced, but the idea is a very important idea. Sometimes we die. What does that mean, we die? What is the ego? It's your image of yourself. And sometimes that breaks, but that's not necessarily so bad. You know why? Because you then get to make a new you. We can never become not naive again. Whenever you go through somebody who was mean and rude, there was a lady, she wrote a book called Blessings of a Broken Heart, Sherry Mandel, and unfortunately her son was stoned to death by Arab terrorists. And she wrote about that. She said, and we had a guy, a friend of ours, a psychiatrist who was on an Israel trip, and she spoke. She said something and he came back and he said this. She said, you cannot become the person you were. A lot of us, I think, what's going on is we want to revert back to, like you were saying, that child, we want to revert back to that innocent space where there are no problems. Well,
That's
guess what? This world has some problems. Now that you were hurt, you're 1,000 times smarter and stronger. And you're 1,000 times less likely to get hurt in the future. So now, what the point that I'm trying to bring out is that you have to look. There's a Jewish, the Baal Shem Tov says, if you can see the good in the bad will come to be good. You have to also be able to say that the past happened, and now I can be a springboard. It can be a springboard for an infinitely better future.
I agree with that.
Huh?
Something that we don't, first of all, the past will always stay with us. We cannot get away from it. And we have to learn how, in our own way, each person in his or her own way needs to learn to deal with that.
Right.
But there's a but there. We have to realize that we're living today and that we have to do the best thing for today and for tomorrow.
Right. 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 We're not stuck in the past.
We're not stuck in the past.
Right.
The past will influence us. The past, sometimes for good, sometimes for not so good, but we are living today, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. Things can change, and I've had this certainly in my life, and quite a number of times. Things can change in 2 seconds flat. That's very important to realize.
Yeah. Right. So everything can become infinitely better. Sometimes a certain event, whether it's a marriage or a new job or something, can completely make you. But I think one of the most critical things in life is to give people a realistic thing about life. And this comes from Jewish mysticism, and I experienced this personally, is that we're all here to grow. And
Yes.
growth always means that you're leaving one stage to get to the next stage.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry, before I forget it.
Yeah.
One more thing that is crucial is taking responsibility for your own life and not leaving it to other people.
Right.
I don't know how many times, how many clients I've had, and this is one of the crucial things, is that people expect somebody else to do everything for them.
Right.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
I am the person who is responsible for what happens to me, not
Right.
somebody else.
Right.
I am the person who takes actions to change my life and
Right.
to go further. And those are the people who are the most successful at getting through things. And
Right.
and again, coming back to the theme of freedom, these are the people who free themselves.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that's really one of the Jewish secrets. The great Jewish secret is
Absolutely.
that we are, on one hand, given a mission, and the other hand, we're given responsibility. In other words, many kind of societies or even religions want you just to obey. Judaism wants you to create.
That's right.
And that's a very important difference. The idea of Judaism, if you look at the Bible, and a lot of people believe it, God made this world and he says, rule it and conquer it, have children, do your best, make it into a great place. In other words, God is saying, I'm not going to force you to be a mensch. I'm not going to force you to live a life of meaning, but I really hope you do. And I think that that message of freedom and responsibility is the ultimate message. And that's what happened when we were freed. We were also given responsibility.
Yes.
And so when we have these two ideas in our head, that it's not about the government taking care of me, because trust me, the government they don't even know you exist. It's not about someone else taking care of me. They have enough of their own problems, even if they love you. It's rather about what can I do, both for myself as well as for others, because then you have freedom. That's where you can shine. That's where you're really free. And you have responsibility, and therefore you have opportunity for meaning. And so once we get this into our head, maybe this is really the whole idea of the freedom. And this Passover, when we're eating the matzah, nobody has power over my actions. Only I do. And God himself says that you have the power and you have the responsibility. And once you understand that, then you can be everything you can be. And maybe that's the secret why Jews have done so much in this world, is because subconsciously, for thousands of years, they lived a story which says, you are free, no one has power over your actions, and you are responsible. And when you have that message in your head, then you live up to it. And when you live up to it, you make yourself proud of yourself. And that's the ultimate happiness.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
All right, guys, you heard it from the doctor. It's good to have confirmation.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted.
Any closing remarks?
No, just, yeah, I guess one. If people want to learn how to be barefoot therapists, let them contact us.
Please. Yes. Yes.
We can set up a group, 3 to 10 people. We can set up several groups if we want to.
Yeah.
Zevi and I can do this. I have a colleague who can do this as well. So anybody who's interested, please do contact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to maybe even use we should get young people involved.
Absolutely.
That would be the best.
Completely
And then
agree with that.
that would be a great thing. And then train them and then start, they would do this for their life. That would be a real goal.
Exactly.
So I want to conclude.
And wait one sec here. The people who we're talking to don't have to be trained. They don't have to have social work or psychology or medicine or anything.
Yeah.
The people coming off the street and they can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's within the capabilities of everybody. We've had a lot of experience with that, and it does work.
How many groups have you trained?
At least 5 or 6 a year since 1995 at very least, and probably a number more before then. So.
All right. So we're in good hands here.
I hope so. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Last but not least, I want to say that another very important belief is having hope. I think the belief that Mashiach is going to come, we Jews believe, and we have absolute evidence. Somebody, I answer questions on Quora. Someone said, is the modern state of Israel a biblical prophecy? And I answered, yes. Never before in human history has God said beforehand, he says, I'm going to put you in a land and you're going to sin. I'm going to send you out and I'm going to bring you back. That's a 3,300 year prediction, which has happened. And God has told us the world is going to be amazing. And so it's really important to get wherever the ocean you're swimming in is exactly what you're going to feel. You're swimming in hot water, you'll feel hot. Cold water, cold. Warm water, warm. Don't swim in a media that's telling you everything that's wrong in the times that have never been better, spiritually or physical, in all of human history. And you could read any study to prove what I'm saying is true. Get into your head that this world is a process. It's a process of infinite growth. We began a little bit as barbarians and savages. Then God gave us the Bible and he showed us how to have court systems and law and order and respect and love and family and community and society. And we're still learning. And that's okay, because we're not geniuses, like you said. We're always doing the best given the circumstances that we have. And so the point is that we are at the top of the mountain. You have to see where we've come from as a world. There were world wars, the savagery, and we're so high up in the fact that we respect women. We believe in human rights. We don't believe in conquest. You look at the West, they gave away all these countries that they had because they didn't believe it was right. Russia did that as well. Never in human history did countries give away empires just because they felt it was the right thing to do. So the point is we're heading in the right direction. Don't be part of the negativity, us versus them. Be part of the positivity. This is a divine process. And if you want the real truth, you have to go to the spiritual information. Go to Chabad.org, go to my website, KabbalahWisdom.org. This is amazing revelations of divine wisdom, and I call it spiritual technology to open our hearts, open our souls, open our consciousness, our ability to get over negativity, to be in positivity. I really recommend my book and course as well, Kabbalah Love. You can go to KabbalahLove.org. It's helped a lot of people. So in conclusion, I want to say to Dr. Tauber, first of all, thank you very much. Your wisdom is very, very good, and it's very helpful. And I want to tell everybody out there that, you've heard it. I have an expertise in Judaism, Jewish mysticism. Dr. Tauber is an expert in psychology. We're both basically saying the same thing. And so there's a lot of practical wisdom here. But if you go to a doctor and he gives you a prescription and you don't do it, then you will not get better. It always boils down to action. We've said everything boiled down. We set it into steps and everything. Belief in God, have a mission, have an occupation or a hobby that have good relationships, Have somebody that you can talk to, or a journal that you express your emotions. Try to see the good and the bad. Know that everything is growth. Know that the world is getting exponentially better. As technology gets better, so also are we getting emotionally, and human rights, we're getting better. Don't focus on the negative. Focus on how far we've come from and how far we have to go. And if you want to make the world better, it's only through making it better, doing something. Be the person. And last but not least, probably one of the best things you can do is join a group, contact Dr. Tauber. I'll try to put your website there, and literally get a whole bunch of friends. You guys can become barefoot therapists. You can learn amazing techniques. I saw the curriculum. It's real. It's good. You're welcome to go on my website. I'll be happy to give you a group on Kabbalah Love. If I may say, you're getting for free things that are worth thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. We do this because we're volunteers. We love it and we're passionate. And you will have skills to really make your lives, and most importantly, the lives of those that you interact with and others, amazing.
That's it.
Any final?
Just thank you for the opportunity to talk to me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good one.
Okay, as they say in the classic, sei gesund.
Sei gesund.